Everyone, and welcome to the Environment and Planning Committee meeting of Monday, the 14th of November 2022. I'll declare the meeting open at 7:33 p.m. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. Apologies. I don't think we have any apologies. I think we've got all of our councillors here this evening. Thank you. No requests to attend by visual link. Notice of live streaming of the committee meeting. Staff and the public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being broadcast live on Council's website. This recording will also be made available on Council's website. The Code of Meeting Practice. The order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed or confidential session, according to Section 15 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council, and mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Disclosures of interest. Do any councillors have any interest to declare this evening? Okay, I'll take that as a no. We will move on to our next item, which is public participation on items on the agenda. There are 9 speakers registered for tonight's meeting. I'll remind the speakers that speakers have a 3-minute time limit. The first sound you hear indicates that you have 30 seconds remaining. At the second sound, please conclude your comments. And we'll move to our speakers now. Our first speaker tonight is addressing us in person. That's Mr. Eddie Wren, and that's item ENB 034-22, Beverly Hills Master Plan, consideration of options. Mr. Wren, if you would like to come forward and address the council. Sorry.
Okay. I am here with my neighbour to object to the overdevelopment of Beverly Hills. Like most here, we are in complete support of the revitalisation of Beverly Hills and the removal of compulsory acquisition. However, we are bitterly disappointed and must object to the recommendation of option 3. To demonstrate and support this, we have collected signatures of those immediate R2 zone who are also in agreement with this, and I believe Eddie emailed that to councillors today. We object to the increase in overall size and height of the B2 zone along King George's Road. This is an unreasonable development proposal and we object based on the following. Visual impact on the surrounding neighbourhood, creating a lack of privacy for residents in the existing R2 zone. Overshadowing and a lack of sunlight. An increase of light pollution from both the new road and 7 to 10-storey buildings. Increased noise due to years of construction, public plaza with alfresco dining and increased traffic along existing and proposed roads. Creation of a wind tunnel as you come from either direction on King George's Road, and has council done any studies on this? Parking, even if provided, will still be an issue. You cannot tell me with the increase of 1,309 new dwellings there won't be an additional parking issue. Traffic. The addition of a 2-lane road will increase traffic on local roads. Currently during peak hour, it can take at least 20 minutes to turn onto King George's Road from Morgan Street, and likewise when trying to exit Lees Avenue onto Stony Creek Road. The addition of new streets and dwellings will cause further traffic hazards and traffic delays and hazard to the existing community, trying to access schools, local amenities and transport options. We are already lacking a high school, be it co-ed or boys. With the proposed increase in population, how does council propose to facilitate this additional need? To not address issues such as this highlights the fact that council has not considered the wider impact this development imposes on the community. Safety. Can council guarantee the safety of existing residents with the dramatic increase in population? And damage to existing pre-World War II houses during construction. Most houses in the proposed area are one-storey red brick bungalows, almost 90 years old. How can you guarantee our homes will not be damaged during the many years of construction, piling and roadworks? And finally, and most importantly, the destruction of character of Beverley Hills. On that, we object to the southern side of the railway line taking the full impact of the overdevelopment. The reference that the plan respects the garden city character of the northern side of the rail line diminishes the value of the southern side. And this is exactly what will happen to those houses left in the R2 zone, as their values would drop. Wouldn't it make more sense to revitalise all of Beverley Hills? And bigger doesn't always mean better. Beverley Hills is a diverse community with all ages and many different nationalities. Had we wanted to live in a bustling, overdeveloped suburb, we would have purchased elsewhere. Instead, we chose the character and amenity of Beverley Hills. For council to impose overdevelopment on the community displays a lack of understanding, general ignorance, and an unwillingness to think outside the box to come up with a creative solution that works for all, not just a select few. I put this challenge to council to become a leader of consultative, cooperative change by bringing the community together and taking them on this journey to develop a proposal that works for all. And finally, I implore this committee to put themselves in the position, and I ask the question, would you be happy for a 7 to 10 story would you be happy to have a 7 to 10 story building built at the end of your street? I suspect the answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you to that speaker. Our next speaker for this evening is Mr. James Strickland. He's also speaking on ENB 034-22, Beverley Hills Master Plan Consideration of Options. Mr. Strickland, if you'd like to come forward, thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to thank Georges River for allowing me to speak on behalf of the group that I represent in the Beverley Hills community. When the consultations first began, Georges River and State Transport had information booths in front of the IGA. State Transport spoke about the commuter and community car parks to alleviate parking woes and encourage public transport usage. State Transport also spoke of the 24/7 Badgerys Creek Airport link to the domestic and international airports at Mascot and the new 24/7 Freight Centre, that's out Liverpool way. The upgrade of Beverley Hills Station was listed and discussed in the 2018 report. This is it. It's very, very complex, but it's there. Georges River spoke about the needs to revitalise Beverley Hills infrastructure for a more diverse central business district to attract businesses and to enhance Beverley Hills' profile. This would benefit the local economy, employment opportunities for locals. Georges River outlined that Beverley Hills would need 1,500 affordable new dwellings. KGA Consultancy compiled this report, the Beverley Hills Town Centre Vision Engagement Summary Report on November 2018. Firstly, I'd like to speak about retail. This subject is mentioned in this report and also featured on the master plan. But we asked, why is there a retail plaza on the east side on the master plan when IGA is already there? In 2018 report, the community wanted the retail on the west side at the car park. It's listed in there. Secondly, the vacant block between the pub and the cinema was mentioned in this report about being an eyesore. There is now a hotel on the master plan, but why wasn't the community had the opportunity to comment? Thirdly, the new street proposal and forceful land acquisition appeared on the master plan, but this wasn't discussed in this report or in the consultation process. That's why the media became involved, and that's why a protest meeting was with the state opposition leader, Chris Minns, on those 2 points. Fourth, high density. This was mentioned in this report, and it's also listed in the master plan. The master plan has high density on King George's Road, which goes against the state government's guidelines of high density on rail corridors. Fifth, only a couple of paragraphs. Fifth, the RTA site was discussed and listed in the 218 report. This site is a medical centre recommended by Georges River Council and accepted by the Eastern and Southern District Health Services. This development is nowhere near transport hubs as per the state government's guidelines. As you can see, we are not against revitalising Beverly Hills. We want it so much. And when Georges River Council advised of the new dwelling needs, retail plaza and car park, the community believed this development was cooperative by State Transport and Georges River. Something a bit like the pottery at Kingsgrove. But we didn't get this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. The next speaker for tonight is Kwang Din, who's also speaking on the same topic, ENB 034-22, the Beverly Hills Master Plan. Thank you, Mr. Din.
Your Honour, councils, overall, I represent the Beresford Avenue street and the community, which is closer towards the Stony Creek Road and the primary school. Overall, we agree with the revitalisation of the King George's Road. However, the overall scale of the buildings around King George's Road and Stony Creek Road is way too high. I wanted to focus on a couple of points because I feel like it's been missed in the option 3, so we're against option 3. The gateway of Stony Creek Road and King George's at the moment on option 3 is saying 8 levels, and the vacant block right next to it, which is being used for truck parking, is also stating 6, step down to 4. Okay. Now, I want to point out there that site, those 2 blocks, are actually on the highest level of elevation overlooking Beverly Hills down to the railway. So any heights in that will appear higher than what it is to the residents right next to it, which is an R2 zone. Now, further to that, on that site, there is no luxury of a separation like a green corridor like other sites. So therefore, any heights on that site is actually impacting R2 residential right next to it. I also want to point out that there was a DA on 2019 that was approved for the vacant block of 3 levels and of 5 levels to the gateway site. So with option 3, that 3 levels now has increased to 6, and that 5 level now has increased to 8, impacting the residents towards right next to it on both Beresford Avenue and Lee Avenue. So there's deep impacts on privacy and overshadowing and further down as well. So overall, I would ask you to keep the gateway site at 5 levels and the vacant block at 3 levels instead of going up, because that has deep impact and privacy issues on the residents right next to it. The second point I want to raise is Beresford Avenue. It appears on option 3 that it's opening access from King George's Road to Beresford Avenue. Now, that street is being used for lots of pedestrians, particularly school kids going to public school. Opening that up is now increasing decreasing the safety, and I'm concerned that my kids and kids around the school, kids around the community walking to that school, there's going to be disasters going to happen. So I ask you to close that street, do not open it up. And further to that, there's a new public link being fed into Beresford Avenue. So I ask that please reconsider that, because that's asking for a disaster to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Din. Our next speaker is a written submission. It's Ms. Debbie Lee. It's ENB 034-22, the Beverly Hills Master Plan. Again, Ms. McKinley, you're reading that for us. Thank you.
Please act on the promise given to Beverly Hills residents according to Beverly Hills Town Centre Vision Engagement Summary Report. Please give Beverly Hills a chance to shine from being a dull town for so long. We want the new, vibrant and convenient place to live. It's a no-brainer to have a car park, retails with high-density buildings all in one, and the rail corridor site is the perfect spot for them to happen.
Thank you, Ms. McKinley. Our next speaker is addressing us in person. It's Ms. Catherine Kalman, again on ENB 034-22 Beverly Hills Master Plan. Ms. Kalman, if you'd like to come forward, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the time and the opportunity to speak this evening. Am I too loud? No. I reiterate what the other speakers have said. I too firmly approve of revitalisation. I firmly agree that some densification is needed because we need to improve our public transport access. Our public transport, for me, is the 450 and the 452. That's it. That's all we have. And we've got a rail line where we once had access to Sydenham and Redfern, as well as the airport, was decimated in 2011, and half our services were cut. Okay, that benefited out west. They got further to travel. I feel that the height is too high. A Hamburg study had 5 to 6 floors was the most optimal height for high rise, as it also gave those residents connectivity to the community. One of the key things I've had, especially with the previous master plan, was that it really had no plan for safe wayfinding, safe journey, and that's for our most vulnerable. It's our children and our elderly. Our streets are a rat run, and I witnessed just a couple of months ago now, a high-speed collision on Tullawalla Street in 7:30 in the morning. A pea-brained hoon thought it was okay to rip through a residential street with 2 children's playgrounds and a primary school up the road at high speed. The residents tell me that's normal. We need traffic calming in this and traffic thinning, because we will get a lot more cars coming in from this huge number of extra people coming in. And so that's where I think that we need to be looking at mitigation to reduce the dependence on the car, and that is to improve our rail services, give us back connectivity to Sydenham, at least sometimes, to improve our bus services. We don't have a direct access to Kogarah, which is our main medical area. And also to perhaps give us more alternatives. A big thing, though, with this development, I really feel for the people on the east side, is that their older homes will experience damage. They can experience damage from vibration and differential settlement. At this stage, there's really no protection for homeowners because they will have to prove that the construction caused their damage. And so we need to have some protocols in place to improve that. We also need to confirm that, what about the rail overbridge at Warrawee Place? And is there going to be an equivalent at on the west side? And in addition to that, I just would like to acknowledge the fact that IGA has really changed our life on the north side. And I really concur with the residents on the west side that they too need to have their daily shopping needs met. That's all I've had time to prepare for, because was a very quick one, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Our next speaker is Mr. Ian Cady, who's addressing us remotely and also speaking on ENB 034-22, the Beverly Hills Master Plan consideration of options. Mr. Cady, you're there? Okay, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes to address council. Thank you.
Please leave a detailed message after the tone. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hello, are you there, Mr. Cady? Just for the benefit of the gallery, our next 4 speakers are remotely, so hopefully we won't have to wait for too long. Hello, Mr. Katie, are you there?
We can hear.
Mr. Katie, could you speak up a little, please? So we're just having some technical issues. Hopefully we can get that resolved very quickly for you.
Hello, Ian. Katie speaking.
Mr. Katie, is that you?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Katie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Oh, great. Hi, it's Councillor Lansbury here. I'm the chair of the Environment and Planning Committee. I believe you're online to address us on the ENV 034-22 Beverly Hills Master Plan item.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ian Katie. I'm a Director of Urban Planning at Mecone. I represent the Beverly Hills Owners Association, an association comprising the owners of land within the western side of the strip along King George's Road. I'd like to personally state that urban renewal of the Beverly Hills Town Centre is strongly supported and is indeed well overdue, particularly given the significant infrastructure, including transport infrastructure, serving the locality and the lack of any significant development for many years. The master plan process has been going for many years and we submit should proceed to a formal planning proposal. Extensive master plan consultation has already occurred and a formal statutory process should now proceed. However, notwithstanding residents' concerns, renewal will only occur if the eventual controls facilitate feasible development. In 2018, Council commissioned Hill PDA to prepare economic analysis. And at this time, the Beverly Hills Owners Association engaged AEC property economists to review that analysis. And we submit demonstrated that the yields currently proposed were demonstrated to be insufficient to facilitate feasible redevelopment. And now, while some residents might not like the scale of development necessary to facilitate urban renewal, if it is not achieved, the renewal will simply not occur. We are not aware of any updated feasibility testing that has been undertaken since 2018 and stress that the yields envisaged are still insufficient to facilitate urban renewal. The concerns expressed in 2018 have only become more pronounced given a significant cost escalation since that time. In summary, I urge Council to progress the master plan to a formal planning proposal, but with control sufficient to facilitate financially feasible urban renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katie. Our next speaker is also addressing us remotely. It's Ms. Belinda Stanton, and she's speaking on item ENV 037-22, adoption of Penshurst Park Plan of Management. Hello, Ms. Stanton. You have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Belinda Stanton. I'm the president of Oatley Football Club with over 850 players. In addition to that, we've got 150 coaches and managers. So this year we had about 69 teams. Our issue with Penshurst Park is the lack of access to community sport. Issue one that we have is that the synthetic sports fields will be fully fenced, whereby the community attending any sporting events will be required to pay an admission fee. The draft plan of management does not seem to refer to a fence being installed. The council's response was additional fencing and a ticket box facility is proposed and will be subject to a DA approval. The fence and ticket box is to comply with the National Premier League competition requirement. The fencing will be operable to allow public access to the precinct when not used for ticketed games. The draft plan of management is to be amended to add the following to the relevant sections. Additional fencing and a ticket box facility is proposed and will be subject to DA approval, public exhibition and funding. The fence and ticket box is to comply with the National Premier League competition requirement. The fencing will be operable to allow public access to the precinct. Our response is not that we do not require this for community sport or grassroots football. Football St George has over 10,500 registered players, as opposed to the NPL clubs who are using it now. They've got between 200 and 300 members. We call on council to disclose the cost of the fencing and a ticket box facility and who will be absorbing such costs. This request could only have been received by NPL clubs or members. Football St George response to the draft management plan represents over 10.5 members and the broader community. The second issue that we have is that Penshurst Park should be open to local residents and grassroots football. The council's response was, the current approach to the plan of management is that the field use will not be based on long-term leases, rather on seasonal and short-term bookings. Council manages the booking at Penshurst Park that include Football St George, Hurstville Zagreb and St George City. These are hire agreements and not licences. Football St George, which includes grassroots football, have control presently over 2.5 other synthetic fields at Poulton Park and Peacoast Park. The hire and booking of Penshurst Park is managed internally by council on a needs basis and follows the intent of Penshurst Park being a premium facility. Our response to that is council have continuously made representations that a tender application will be called for in relation to Penshurst Park in June or July 2023. This is contrary to the representations made in council's response. Council have not stipulated and have made it clear that Football St George have been provided with only 1.5 evenings during the 2022 winter competition and allocated time for NPL clubs for 6.5 days. Council have relied on Football St George to have access to 2.5 other fields at Poulton Park and Peacoast Park. The council have not disclosed that council have requested Football St George tender for these fields in March 2023. Council have not considered on a needs basis given the greater number of participants. Furthermore, consideration and clarification has not been made in that Poulton Park is occupied by Connells Point Football Club as their home ground, therefore leaving Football St George with only one field to accommodate 13 clubs in the Georges River Council LGA, when their grounds are not in use as a result of grounds' poor conditions and council's inability to fund any improvement or rectification works. Additionally, council have not considered the $1 million contribution made by Football St George by way of transferring a federal government fund to the Penshurst Park project. The fact that the project was initiated by Football St George for grassroots football and the years of resources provided by Football St George in assisting council with the project. We respectfully ask council why these considerations were not made and what seems as though council have gone to extraordinary measures to assist NPL clubs of 200 to 300 members whilst not taking into consideration the greater community.
Ms. Stanton,
The project was intended.
Ms.
Yes,
Stanton, I'm sorry, your time is up. I've let you go a little bit further, but thank you very much for your address tonight.
I didn't hear any of those alarms.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Kim Wagstaff, also addressing us remotely on the same item, ENV 037-22, adoption of Penshurst Park Plan of Management. Mr. Wagstaff, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. Could you please go ahead? As you know, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yep, I just need to correct the record. The schedule shows me speaking as on ENV 037. I'm actually speaking on ENV 036, the adoption of the generic plans of management. That's what I registered for.
Okay, that's completely fine. My list that I have in front of me is incorrect. Please go ahead and speak on item ENV 037. Thank you.
036.
Oh, 036, sorry.
Generic plans of management.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to draw councillors' attention to the report on the adoption of generic plan of management, and it quotes some, there were 4 submitters providing comments, and one of those commenters asked for requested off-road bike riding in Gannons Park. The officer's response to that was that prior to any use of Gannons, Lower Gannons and Oatley Park being considered for off-road biking or dirt jumps or trails, Council needs to undertake detailed site, environmental and recreational feasibility to determine if Gannons Park or Oatley Park, brackets or both, are to be pursued for off-road bike facilities. Once a preferred direction is established, then the relevant plan and management can be amended and sought capital works money. I'd just like to say that I hope the officer didn't express it that way and not say or neither of the sites chosen to pursue, and I hope that doesn't mean it's a fait accompli, that one or other of these sites will be chosen. I just want to speak briefly about Oatley Park in particular in this context. Oatley Park is the most significant area of bushland remaining in the St George district. Its importance as a sanctuary for native flora and fauna is increased because it is linked by bush corridors of Limekiln Bay to narrow but substantial reserves fringing South Peakhurst and Laguna. The park is not completely natural. It is subject to intensive recreational use. Nevertheless, there remain some significant natural areas protecting a wide range of native plants, many of which are locally endangered or are regionally extinct. There are in fact 309 different vegetation species, plant species in Oatley Park recorded. So it's a significant natural sanctuary. Oatley Park protects important examples of the natural environment which occurred throughout the area before the spread of suburbs. Within its boundaries are numerous microhabitats giving protection to a variety of native plants and animals. The park's natural value cannot be taken for granted. The flora is under threat from excessive hazard reduction burning, from too many recreational visitors, and from park maintenance and clearing. The future of the park depends on community concern, awareness that this is a valuable asset, and management by the trustees with expertise and foresight. So I come back to the comment about the progress of the bike riding. I put it to you, councillors, that what is the point of looking at Oatley Park in particular for this off-road biking when we know it is the jewel in the crown of council's reserves, and it's got loads and loads of high quality bush and vegetation in it. It harbours native wildlife. We've seen echidnas and powerful owls and all sorts of animals in Oatley Park. It is precious to the local community. So I would suggest that you might like to strike that one off the list and save some money in going through all these investigations, when I could say with pretty much certain that the feasibility study and the environmental impacts of putting an off-road mountain bike track or tracks in the park will not be feasible. So I'll leave you with that thought, councillors. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Adrian Polhill. He's also addressing us remotely, and he's speaking on item ENB 036-22, the adoption of the generic plans of management. Mr. Polhill, are you on the line?
Yep. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Polhill. It's Councillor Lansbury here. You're here to address us on the adoption of the generic plans of management item. You have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm speaking about the plan to actually include Oatley Park as part of a potential feasibility study for mountain biking and off-road biking. I actually do think that Oatley Park should not be included in any such study. Oatley Park is the jewel in our crown. It's a beautiful park. It's full of, as you know from the recent biodiversity study, there is an amazing amount of biodiversity, both animal and plant, in Oakley Park, and that must be protected first and foremost for the future generations as well as ours. So I am speaking so that everybody knows how passionate about I am about the environment. I know that mountain biking, off-road biking does have a place in our community. There are some bike trails and sealed roads where bikes can be ridden in Oakley Park, and that's sufficient. If there is going to be a study done, sure, I'm in agreement that Dannons Park is a great place and the feasibility study should be done there, but certainly not in Oakley Park. So that's my view, and also my wife and friends and family who use Oakley Park quite frequently. We want to protect that area for its beautiful environment and for our future generations. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sure that there's a lot of other passionate residents who speak very similarly and who think very similarly to myself. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Polhill. It concludes our Speakers in Public Forum for tonight. I'd just like to thank everybody for addressing us on these very important issues. Our next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting, which was the meeting held on the 10th of October 2022. So I'd like to call for a motion to adopt the minutes of that meeting. Moved by Councillor Marnie, seconded by Councillor Borg. I think we can just, all those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, we'll declare that one carried. We'll now move on to our committee reports, and the first item on the agenda tonight is ENV 033-22, the New South Wales Local Government Heritage Grant Application 2023 to 25. Before we hear from one of our council officers on this, I'd like to ask that somebody moves that, please. Moved by Councillor Jamieson and seconded by the Mayor, Councillor Katras. And I think Ms. McMahon, we're going to speak briefly to this. Thank you.
This report is to advise council that officers have applied for a $25,000 grant under the Local Government Heritage Grants Program back in September. It's expected that New South Wales Heritage will advise the outcome of council's application in April-May next year. Council has previously received heritage grants under the Heritage Officers Grants Program. We've received $11,000 towards the Heritage Building Grant and $12,000 for Council's Heritage Advisor across 2 years, 2021 to 22 and 2022 to 23. The application that officers have applied for the years July 2023 to June 2025. Should council be successful in obtaining the grant, that the council will need to match the funding. It is proposed that there will be a budget bid for the financial year 2023 to 24 to fund both the Heritage Advisory Service and the Heritage Building Grants Program. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. McMahon. Councillors, do any of you have any questions for Ms. McMahon? No? Okay, we might put that to the meeting. Ms. McKinley, should we go around the room for this one? Thank you.
Your vote, please, Madam Chair. 4. Councillor Amby Haperhar.
4.
Councillor Borg.
4.
Councillor Jamieson. 4. Councillor Marnie.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
Mayor, Councillor Katras.
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you, Ms. McKinley. We will move on to the next item, which is ENV 034-22, the Beverly Hills Master Plan, consideration of options. Do I have a mover?
I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm moving the following motion in place of the recommendation that's before us. It involves, and I think it's right up there, or we're going to get it up there somehow. Yeah. The council receives and notes the comprehensive report provided by the council officers regarding the matter of the Beverly Hills Master Plan. Council resolves the following. 1. The matter is to be deferred to a workshop of all councillors so that they can seek further clarification to express their opinions regarding all matters contained in this report. 2. Council reaffirms its previous resolution that any further master plan for the Beverly Hills Centre must not incorporate any form of compulsory acquisition of private property. 3. Further to this, that the Green Corridor and Public Link proposed in option 3 are not to be incorporated in a future master plan for the centre.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would somebody like to second that? So Councillor Andrew Abraham. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, the reason why, first of all, I want to thank all the residents that took the trouble to actually attend tonight's meeting. I also want to thank the speakers who've given some food for thought, which I've been hearing most of the time, and I think it's quite important that we actually consider what you've proposed to us and what you've said to us. And I think the reason why I'm moving this is because it's a very, very comprehensive and detailed report, and it takes a lot of understanding and a lot of work in terms of actually understanding what's in there. It's not a matter of 3 points in the report. It's a matter of putting all the matters that are in that report together. It's not a matter of just reading the council officer's report. It's also a matter of reading the appendixes, and the appendixes contain a lot of information. And I do thank the council officers for providing such a detailed report, and also to providing all the attachments. Councillors, I thank the director for actually putting so much effort into this, so that we're on top of things. But we need time. We really do need time to consider everything that's in there. It's not a matter of actually looking at it now, doing policy on the run, making changes in one committee meeting when it's such an important issue for our community. We need to get together, we need to ask the pertinent questions, we need to express our opinions, we need to talk more to the community, and we need to actually take into consideration that there are conflicting opinions on this. There are people on the western side who really would like to get on with developing their properties. There are people on the eastern side that are going to be impacted on by any proposal that we put. And I think we need to take that into consideration. And one of the reasons why there are two aspects to this which I felt were very important, and that is the possible compulsory acquisition, and that was something that appeared in my mayoral minute I think it was the last meeting, where I indicated that we are not going to be considering any compulsory acquisitions. But the other aspect was the Green Corridor going behind some of the property. I understand properties. I understand some of the council officers' position on this, and they're saying that we need to have a transition between the higher density development and the lower density development. But it's also been put to me, why does my property, or my two people that own those properties, why is my property going to be affected by a road? Which basically, and why should I be negotiating with a developer to actually buy my property with a road on it? Now, I understand that there's got to be a transition, but that transition can be done in many other ways, whether it's setbacks, lower densities, townhouses, etc. That can be done, and that's something that you need to discuss as councillors with the council officers as to how you see that. The issue that we have, there's one agreement amongst everyone, I believe. I may be wrong. There might be one person or two people in the audience that say, no, I don't agree with that. If you look at photographs of Beverly Hills Shopping Centre 40 years ago, I go 40 years ago, you look at that and you say, and then you look at contemporary photographs now, I'm telling you, the only thing that's changed are the cars. The old FJ Holdens and the new, whatever they are, Ford Duties or whatever they are. That's all that's changed in Beverly Hills. And so, councillors, you've really got to look at having an even and a good balance between allowing urban renewal to take place and mitigating mitigating the affectations or the impact on those people which around the east are part of what you might call a garden suburb, wider streets, especially towards the north. On the western side, you've got 4-story flats, but you've got some areas which are open to development. And the people on the western side are saying, we want development to take place. We're interested in development taking place. So we've got we're in a way a difficult position, but I think it's not a position that can't be resolved. I think it's a position where we express our ideas. No development is not going to happen. In other words, I'm saying don't expect no development to happen because we cannot afford to allow the Beverly Hills shopping centre to remain like it is. And let's be quite honest about this. Now that they've actually put a clearway through, it's going to be Canterbury Road all over again. I don't know if many people here in the audience remember Canterbury Road, but it was a really bustling line of shops. Then they put an expressway through it, clearway through it. All the shops are dead, and it's what they used to call a shanty town. It's disgusting, apart from the multi-story block of units that have gone up. But having said all that, we have a responsibility to listen to our community, but also a responsibility to the future generations to ensure that certain visions, certain future initiatives take place so that we can have that urban renewal to take place. So, councillors, I think we need to take the opportunity to have this workshop. We may have to go back again to the community. I think that may be a very good thing to do. But there's going to have to be some sort of compromise and some sort of realisation that it has to happen. It has to happen. But not at the expense of people suffering from all those issues in terms of total impact on those residents that are going to be fronting large shops or units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Amby Haverhart, as a seconder, did you wish to speak to that? Okay, thank you. We'll go to questions then. I'm quite sure there will be councillors with questions of either Mr. Mayor or council officers. Councillor Borg?
Yes, thank you. I did have just a question. I know that a lot of the feedback from the community has been the concern over the compulsory acquisition, and I think the Mayor's Mayoral Minute last month gave some peace of mind over that. And then there was some further concern with the Green Link that is not necessarily compulsory acquisition, but acquisition, perhaps by developer acquisition. So I just had a question to the Mayor on item 2 in the amended motion there, Mr. Mayor. It says the council reaffirms its previous resolution that any further master plan for the Beverly Hills Centre must not incorporate any form of compulsory acquisition of private property, and just wondered whether you think it's worth including in there the developer acquisition, or do you feel that is covered off in point 3? So I just wanted to ask that question. In item 2 of that amendment, we say that any future master plan must not incorporate any form of compulsory acquisition of private property, but I understand concern from the community is not just on the compulsory acquisition, but also on potential developer acquisition if properties are earmarked. So I'm wondering whether point 2 needs to provide a bit more clarification on the type of acquisition. So I just
Mr. Mayor, the director just wanted to have a word on that before you answer that. The director, Ms. Bishop, just wanted to comment on that, if that's okay. Thanks, Councillor Ball.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Ball. I take your point. However, I think the council should undertake the workshop first before we go into any process for discussing around, I guess, acquisitions of property by the development process. It's a process that does happen. A natural process that does happen through development, but I think we should discuss that first prior to making any resolution of council.
Ms. Bishop. Mr. Mayor, did you want to?
Just the issue, I totally agree with the director on this, but I must admit to developers purchasing property, it's a market force. You can't just stop them from wanting to buy a property. If that's the intention, I'd like to know if there was any other way you'd like to put it. But if someone comes up to me in the Beverly Hills master plan and says, and I own a property there, I don't, so I don't have a conflict of interest. I own a property there, so I'm going to give you $5 million for your property. That's a developer wanting to buy your property. So I can't stop a person wanting to buy a property. If you know what I'm saying, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Wang, did I see your light on? Did you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I just want to make 2 points. Yeah. So yeah, first I will support Mayor's motion. Yeah, for defer. Yeah.
Did you want to speak in support of it?
Yes.
Oh, okay, no, that's
Is that
fine.
okay?
You can
Yeah.
speak in support.
Yeah, I support Mayor's motion. And secondly, so I just want to point out that this master plan has been delayed for many years, and it's caused lots of anxiety among the community. But since I would say since the new council started, so I have made marvelous progress. Most importantly, we have got rid of the compulsory acquisition. So I think that's the big achievement. And even for the further workshop and the further like the plan, so it's not going to, from my perspective at least, it's not going to go in-depthly. So maybe we just need to iron out some of the details and come with some compromise backs and checks and balance. So I would really want to, help the community and get this done properly. So that's why I supported the Mayor's motion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wang. We've had 2 speakers for the Mayor's amendment. Did anyone wish to speak against it? No one wishes to speak against it. Did anyone have any other questions of our staff or of the Mayor in relation to his amendment? No? Well, look, if that's the case, I think we may as well put it to a vote then, if everyone's happy to do that. And I think, just for the benefit of the gallery, I'm pretty sure you understand where we're heading with this. The Mayor has, don't think you can see the screen, the Mayor has moved an amendment so that we defer this to a council workshop and for further consideration, etc. So, Ms McKinley, would you mind doing
Your vote, please, Madam Chair.
for the amendment?
Councillor Amby Haperhal.
For.
Councillor Borg.
For.
Councillor Jamieson.
For.
Councillor Marnie.
For.
Councillor Wang.
For.
Councillor Catras.
For.
7 votes for, unanimous.
Great, thank you, Ms McKinley. So we can declare that one carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is ENV 035-22, the Georges River Affordable Housing Contribution Scheme 2022. If I could call for a mover for this item, please. Councillor Jamieson is moving it. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Borg, thank you. Ms McMahon, were you speaking to this one? Thank you.
Council at its meeting in September this year resolved not to proceed with a draft affordable housing contribution scheme in the Mortdale Local Centre at this stage, but to investigate a scheme that applies across the whole LGA. This report recommends that Council prepares an local government area-wide affordable housing contribution scheme and amend its planning agreements policy to comply with the direction issued in 2019, which imposes preconditions and mandatory considerations for a council to take into account prior to entering into a planning agreement for affordable housing. Affordable housing is housing that is appropriate for the needs of a range of very low to moderate income households and priced so that these households are also able to meet other basic living costs such as food, clothing, transport, medical care and education. As a rule of thumb, housing is usually considered affordable if it costs less than 30% of gross household income. Affordable rental housing is usually owned or developed by local government, charitable organisations or community housing providers. It is usually managed by a non-profit community housing provider. Affordable housing is an essential component of the affordable housing continuum, which includes crisis and transitional housing, such as homeless shelters, social housing, affordable housing, and market private housing. There is a clear need for affordable housing in the Georges River local government area. The LGA experiences overcrowding, homelessness, rental stress, mortgage stress, lack of accommodation for key workers such as police, nurses. Council should also note that the average waiting time for social housing in the Georges River LGA is 10 years and more, and there are currently 1,400 households on the social housing waiting list. The policy framework and legislation for supporting affordable housing ranges from state legislation to policies by all levels of government. Council can assist in two ways: amend its planning agreement policy and prepare a local government area affordable housing contribution scheme. Council has resolved to amend its planning agreement previously, and an amended planning agreement did go up to Council in September 2020 when it was deferred. The review on the planning agreement recommenced in July this year, and one of the things that we can now look at is to include affordable housing as a public benefit that a planning agreement can ask for. Secondly, if Council wishes to include an affordable housing in its new planning agreement, it needs to prepare an affordable housing contribution scheme. Now, an affordable housing contribution scheme is a council-led document. It's a policy document by council, which sets out how, where, and at what rate development contributions can be collected by councils for affordable housing. It can also indicate whether or not council will receive works in kind, such as a unit for affordable housing in a redevelopment site. Council can prepare a single scheme to apply to multiple areas within the LGA, as long as the viability analysis for each area is investigated, because it has to be economically viable for the developer. The steps to prepare an affordable housing contribution scheme are set out in the report in paragraph 63. Council will need to identify areas for rezoning. Some of these will come through applicant-led planning proposals. The Council's local housing strategy also identifies areas suitable for growth, as well as its local strategic planning statement. Finally, Council is required to formally advise the Department of Planning and Environment on its intention to prepare an affordable housing contribution scheme. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Ms McMahon. Do councillors, does anybody have any questions for Ms McMahon? No questions? Okay, thank you. I think I'm very supportive of this particular proposal. I think it's very timely that we do it, and anyone who hasn't had a chance in the gallery to read the report, I recommend that you do. It's very comprehensive, and it clarifies the difference between affordable and social housing, which is often confused by people. So thank you. We have a mover. We have Councillor Jamieson's moved it and Councillor Borg seconded it. So we'll put it to the committee. Ms McKinley, would you mind going around?
Your vote, please, Madam Chair. 4. Councillor Amber Paperhard. 4. Councillor Borg. 4. Councillor Jamieson. 4. Councillor Marnie. 4. Councillor Wang. 4. Mayor Councillor Katras.
4.
7 votes for. That's unanimous.
Thank you, Ms McKinley. We'll declare that carried. Our next item on the agenda is ENV 036-22, adoption of generic plans of management. Could I have a mover? Councillor Marnie and a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Jamieson. Okay. Councillor Marnie, did you wish to speak on this, or would we go straight to our council officers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have an amendment to this.
Okay, thank you.
Don't mind, which I've sent to the council staff. The amendment is point F, that council not proceed with undertaking any detailed site, environmental and recreational feasibility studies to determine if Oakley Park should be pursued for any new off-road bike facilities, given the severe threats which those facilities would present to the environment.
That's your amendment, councillor Marnie. Councillor Jamieson, you accept that amendment? Okay, thank you. Did you want to speak to that, or did we want to go to the council officers first?
Whatever's the protocol, I can speak to it, or
yeah. Why don't you speak to it
thanks.
first and explain why you wanted to move that amendment, and then perhaps Ms McMahon, we can go to you if that's okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Okay, as councillors are aware, Total Earthcare recently conducted an exceptional and comprehensive biodiversity study on a significant part of the LGA, which is now open for public comment. Over the past few weeks, I've received extremely complimentary feedback from community members on the consultant's report as to its level of professionalism and the depth of investigations it has undertaken into public land, particularly our parks and reserves. Their expert staff have made some far-reaching findings on Oakley Park in that study, which is wholly located within the Foreshore Scenic Protection Area, and I note a few of them using, and I note a few of those aspects using quotes from that report. Oakley Park and Limekiln Bay Reserve comprise the largest parkland area in the study area, 64.3 hectares. This site covers 8 different plant communities and is known habitat for several threatened species. Another one, most of the site is listed as local heritage for various reasons, including being one of Sydney's finest areas of natural bushland that remain undeveloped in an urban area. Another quote, the vegetation across the site comprises 7 key native vegetation communities. 158 flora species were recorded within the survey plots, including 123 native and 35 exotic species. 71 fauna species were recorded at the site, including 52 birds, 11 mammals, 4 amphibians, 3 reptiles and 1 fish. And just comment from myself, several of these species are listed as vulnerable, e.g. the grey-haired flying fox, which is even protected under federal legislation, and the greater broad-nosed bat and powerful owl. Back to the report, the site comprises the largest patch of vegetation in the study area. It provides a diverse variety of vegetation communities and habitat features for flora and fauna. The site is highly resilient as it covers a large single area, and it is positioned on the headland, is isolated from adjacent pressures of developed areas. The site is an important part of the connectivity corridor along the foreshore connecting to Peacoast Foreshore Reserve. Total Earthcare also revealed that, and I'll quote again, large parks and reserves such as Georges River National Park, Gannons Park and Oakley Park provide important habitat refuges and support connectivity within the LGA and between the large areas outside the LGA, such as Holsworthy Military Reserve and the Georges River National Park to the west and the Royal National Park to the south. The consultant has recommended several management measures for Oakley Park to further protect its high conservation value. These include bush regeneration, buffer plans around threatened ecological communities, cat and fox control, and classification as a wildlife protection area, which, to its credit, was completed by Council earlier this year, as well as to, quote again, improve habitat connectivity between Oakley Park and Limekiln Bay Reserve to Miles Dunphy Reserve. Perhaps most importantly, Total Earthcare recommends that Council investigate available options and viability for formal, in perpetuity protection of council reserves, i.e. biodiversity stewardship agreements and conservation agreement under the Biodiversity Conservation Act 2016. In addition to the valuable data provided by the consultant, the esteemed environmentalist, the late Dr. Sharon Cullis, PhD, who has been honoured by Council 3 times this year via 2 Merrill minutes and a condolence motion, had also compiled a wealth of scientific arguments against the construction of this infrastructure in Oakley Park, and I was fortunate to be privy to this which completely accords with Total Earth Care's findings. Oatley Park is classified by Council as an iconic park, and the only other reserve which carries that on in LGA is Cars Park. Turning to Table 2, key issues raised and Council's office response on page 85. One of the key issues is Oatley Park dirt jumps and or trails. The officer's response is Council needs to undertake detailed site environmental and recreational feasibility to determine if Gannons Park or Oatley Park or both are to be pursued for off-road bike facilities. I'd just like to echo the thoughts of the two speakers tonight, and also I guess everybody I know in Oatley West, where I've lived for 27 odd years, they're dead against this idea of bikes sort of crashing through the bush, where there's already facilities through a flight trail and the paved roads to do that. With the above in mind, I therefore I believe further consideration of Oatley Park for off-road bike facilities would not prove worthwhile. On that basis, I'd like to move this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Jamieson, did you wish to speak as a seconder? Okay, thank you. What we'll do now is Ms McMahon will go to you so you can speak about the item as a whole. Thank you.
Council currently has 6 generic plans of management. The former Hurstville ones were the general use, 2007, natural areas, 2008, parks, 2007, and sports ground, 2006. And the former Cogra had local parks and reserves, 2010, and local bushland reserves, 2011. So those 6 generic plans of management have been updated and consolidated into 4 draft generic plans of management for parks, which covers 149 land parcels totaling just under 47 hectares. Sports grounds covers 10 parks, just under 124 hectares, and includes Evetts Park, Gannons, the Hurstville Golf Course, Olds, Renowan, Riverwood, and Vanessa Parks. The third generic is natural areas, covers 44 parcels of land, 37 hectares in total. And lastly, the general community use generic plan of management covers 41 parcels and includes scout halls and community spaces such as men's sheds. The work on the plans of management commenced in about 2017, 18, so they've been undertaken over a long period of time. The reasons being is that we had to update the generic plans of management to include 11 Crown land reserves that were handed over to Council to manage back in 2018. We also found another list of land that wasn't covered by any plan of management, so they were included in the plans of management about a year ago. As some of the plans of management are owned by the Crown, we had to seek the Crown Lands approval by the Department of Planning and Environment. And that approval took a year. They were lodged with the department back in April last year, and we got the approval in April, I think in April this year. The generic plans of management were exhibited from the 15th of June to the 22nd of July. We received 4 submissions, which mainly requested improved or additional amenities at certain parks and reserves, and they're outlined in Table 2 in the report. These are mainly operational matters and would involve input into a capital works program or the assets review that assets and infrastructure do on a yearly basis. So as these are policy documents, no changes have been made to the draft plans. However, in respect to the submissions, they have been forwarded to the Council's Assets and Infrastructure section, who will review and the local park listings and determine the appropriate actions to be taken. Now, under the Local Government Act, we were required to hold a public hearing into the categorisation of 13 reserves that were previously not covered by a plan of management. That public hearing was held on the 28th of July. No members of the public attended the public hearing. So the generic plans of management are now submitted to the committee for endorsement to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McMahon. Councillors, do we have any questions for Ms McMahon? Councillor Wang?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I just have a question about this amendment. Is that to proceed with the feasibility studies or not proceed? I thought it's to proceed with the study to determine number 5. Eight.
Right. Through you, Madam Chair. Oakley Park isn't covered by the generic plans of management. It has its own plan of management and master plan that will come before council early next year, probably in February. However, the submission that was made in response to the exhibition of the generic plans of management included Gannon's Park, which is covered by the generic plans of management, and also Oakley Park. So that's why the table of submissions includes the both parks, but the recommendation that's been proposed by the councillor only involves Oakley Park.
So we just rule that out. Is that the amendment?
The
feasibility study.
The amendment if adopted by council, the amendment means that council will not investigate Oakley Park for off-road biking in the future.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Okay.
That answers your question?
Yes.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions? Okay. Ms McMahon, I just want to thank you for that report and thank you to your staff. That's a lot of work over quite some time and well done to have got it to this point. Thank you. Okay, well, if we don't have any further questions, Councillor Marnie, you've moved your amendment, which everyone can read, I'm sure, that council, I can't read it very well, sorry, that council not proceed with undertaking any detailed site environmental and recreational feasibility studies to determine if Oakley Park should be pursued for any new off-road bike facilities, given the severe threats which those facilities would present to the environment. That's correct? That's I think what I've got. Okay, councillors, no more questions. We'll ask Ms McKinley if you could please go around the room.
Your vote, please, Madam Chair.
4.
Councillor Amby Haperham.
4.
Councillor Borg.
4.
Councillor Jamieson.
4.
Councillor Marnie.
4.
Councillor Wang.
4.
Mayor Councillor Katras.
4.
7 votes for, unanimous.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll declare that carried. Our next item on the agenda is item ENV 037-22, adoption of Penshurst Park Plan of Management. Councillors, do I have a mover?
I do. Can I make an amendment as well?
You're moving it, Councillor Jamieson?
Yep.
Okay. Did you say you had an amendment?
Yes.
Okay. I might just get you to, provide the amendment and then we'll call for a seconder. That's okay.
Should I read it?
You stand up and if you could read it.
No. That an additional point is added, point F, that prior to a development application be lodged for the fence and ticket box under action 1.1 of the plan of management, the design of the fence, including height, materials, location, etc., is to be the subject of a report to council for its approval and endorsement.
So that's your amendment by adding part F. Thank you. Would anybody like to second this particular item? Seconded by Councillor Borg. Councillor Jamieson, actually, should we maybe hear from, are you going to speak? And then we'll hear from you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Penshurst Park is covered by an existing plan of management adopted by the former Hurstville Council in July 2015. Penshurst Park is a major sporting hub and facilitates a broad range of sporting and community facilities. Penshurst Park is owned by Crown Lands. It is also covered by its own master plan, which was developed in 2014 and amended in 2017. Stages 2 and 3 of its redevelopment have been subject to DA approval. Stage 2 has been completed and Stage 3 is under implementation. The Penshurst Plan of Management is required to be updated to meet Council's obligations under the Crown Land Management Act 2016. As of July 2018, local councils that manage dedicated or reserved Crown lands, such as Penshurst Park, are required to manage that land as if it were public land under the Local Government Act, meaning applying plan of management requirements of that act. And therefore we had to do a new plan of management that encompassed both the Local Government Act and the Crown Land Management Act. Work commenced on this plan of management in May 2020. We had preliminary consultation that was held over a period of time at the beginning of that process. In April 2021, Council endorsed the plan of management for public exhibition and for the draft plan to be forwarded to the Department of Planning and Environment for Crown Lands approval. That approval was only supplied by Crown Lands in April this year again. It took over a year. The draft plan of management was then publicly exhibited from the 15th of June to the 22nd of July, with submissions received until the 5th of August. Now, 13 submissions were received, which mostly requested for the sports field to be fully fenced, allowing an admission fee to be charged for sporting events, or requesting grassroots football access to the synthetic sports fields. Submissions also covered traffic. There was also a submission that no further development be approved on the site, but there's already been DA approval. And there was a request to include the Hurstville Glory Football Club in the history of the park, and there was an environmental concern regarding the synthetic turf materials. As a result of the submissions, the following changes have been proposed to the draft plan of management. We've updated the section to state what works have been fully completed and what's still underway. We included action 1.10, which is the subject of recommendation F above, in the draft minutes above. We included the Hurstville Glory Football Club involvement in Penshurst Park in the history section. And we also included actions 4.6 and 4.7 relating to the consideration of environmental and contamination concerns with the synthetic turf playing fields. This report recommends that the plan of management be adopted and finalised with the requirements of the Local Government Act and the Crown Lands Management Act. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Ms. McFarlane. Councillor Jamieson, did you wish to speak to your amendment and motion? Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say, I know Belinda's not here, but she's probably listening. So we are listening to you. And I guess one of the key things that I've heard from the community is the historical and perceived favouritism to certain codes and sporting clubs. And I just wanted to say that there is a sporting committee being set up, I think by Councillor Moore. And in terms of the operations, we've seen from the director, Andrew Ladder, that we went on a little bus tour and we talked about Penshurst Park and specifically spoke about the fence, and that the aim and the discussions were that while we try to support Premier League for the 2 hours that they play, we do not do it at the expense of the community. So that's what the aim of this amendment is, and thank you to Catherine McMahon, who in a last minute flush of the poor lady did a good job to be able to ensure that there is another layer of protection, that another layer of security for the grassroots community sports, that we have an opportunity to ensure that we do not sacrifice the community in the grassroots sports for Premier League, but we do give the opportunity for Premier League to have to be able to play the sports. So that is what the motion is doing. Catherine?
Thank you, Councillor Jamieson. Councillor Ball, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm sort of echo Councillor Jamison's comments and support the amendment. And yeah, the director did take us councillors on a tour, and we did go to Penshurst Park. And I understand that that this report is about a plan of management in whole, and we're sort of focusing in on one small part. But I just want to be really cautious that we are making a slight amendment based on some submissions that are received, but that which is to accommodate offence, but the community haven't had an opportunity to see that amendment before it's put in place. So I support the inclusion of option F in there as a bit of a protection in the future, so that if they find out that a couple of people asked for it, we included it in there, there is an opportunity for them to have their say on it in the future at another point in time. And I did have some questions just in terms of who will be paying for the fence and what return does hosting the MPL games have at when we host them at council. So just wanting to ensure that, and if council are investing in a fence, that it is giving us the return that is worthwhile, with the thought in mind that a fence would come at a cost to the amenity to the residents nearby.
Thanks, Councillor Ball. Director Latta, would you be able to answer Councillor Ball's question?
Madam Chair, I'll just get these questions right at least. So what we're talking about is we're talking about the funding source for the fence. So, Madam Chair, the funding source for the fence is yet to be determined. That will come to council as a separate report. In terms of the returns on the fence, as we suggested in the councillor tour, we're talking about 2 hours, and it's only the senior games. So it's the under 20s and the seniors that would be fenced off. The intent for Penshurst Sporting Hub, in line with the plan of management, is that it's open to the community. It's an open site, apart from those higher times.
Can I ask another question? And is it envisaged that it would be a temporary structure that would go up for the games and then somehow not be there permanently for the visual impact of the people opposite?
Madam Chair, that is the intent. So we're looking at a design that would be a retractable structure and something that would pretty much fold away upon itself. So it would open out the side to the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Latta. Councillors, do we have any further questions? No, we're all okay. Okay, well, there were no speakers against, so I think that we can probably move to going around the room. Ms. McKinley, thank you.
Your vote, please, Madam Chair.
4.
Councillor Amby Haperham.
4.
Councillor Ball.
4.
Councillor Jamieson.
4.
Councillor Marnie.
4.
Councillor Wang.
4.
Mayor Councillor Katras.
4.
7 votes for, unanimous.
Thanks, Ms. McKinley. So we'll declare that one carried. Move on to our final item of the night, which is ENV 038-22, Development and Building Department Functions and Services Metrics Report, Q1 2022/23. If I could get a mover for that particular item. Moved by Councillor Marnie and seconded by the Mayor. And I believe, Mr. Frame, you will be addressing us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Essentially, this report outlines the performance of the Development and Building Unit within the period Q1 of this financial year. Essentially, I suppose the key takeaway point relates to the fact that the council continues to reduce the number of overall applications on hand and continues to move on the building certificates on hand. In terms of overall processing times, our development application processing times did go back a bit from an overall financial year time of 138 days to 163 days in this quarter. There were a couple of drivers behind that, primarily staff turnover and the ability to retain and hold on to staff in the current economic environment, but we are working through that and continuing our recruitment processes. In addition to that, we also had the process in the end of the previous quarter of the implementation of the integration of our assessment systems with the New South Wales Planning Portal, meaning that online lodgements integrate directly with our systems, and there was a period of teething issues of that, which meant that lodgements that came in were low for a couple of months, and subsequently we've been able to, we've had to put some energy into sort of trying to move some of those on, but the consequence of that was that the applications on hand got older on average, and therefore the overall assessment time got older for that period, but that should correct itself now that we've put some more resource into trying to catch it, and the system is largely working as intended. So we currently have 315 overall applications in the DA modification and review space. That's 251 DAs, 62 modifications and 2 Section 8.2 reviews of our decisions. And in addition to that, we have 92 applications awaiting review that have been submitted through the planning portal, but not yet lodged by council. So that's quite a large number who are trying to work through and put resource in to get that down. In terms of the overall volume of applications and the value of applications coming in, it has gone down, as most people would expect this year. We did a rather busy year last year in terms of applications with the COVID building support measures and all that sort of these sorts of programs. And some of that has come back, which is what would be expected. We've also seen a decline in probably larger applications in this quarter. And again, that's the same sort of cost and economic issues affecting the sector. In terms of local planning panel determinations, we have a total of 18 applications go through local planning panel in this quarter. Of those, only 2 of them were deferred, and there was no straight out decisions that were contrary to the recommendation of council staff. So that's indicative that the team understands what the panels sort of panels are working very hard to make sure the panel understands the recommendations and understands, the sorts of things that the panel is interested in terms of council's, in terms of the council's planning controls. We didn't have any Sydney South Regional Planning Panel, that's the state panel determinations in this period. Essentially that's because we only have 2 on hand, and those are being worked through the system, and some of those were dependent upon other planning posts of the council planning proposals and other things in order to progress, but those 2 are on target, and we are working with the state panels to make sure that we can get them reported as soon as we can. In terms of building information certificates, we've continued our program of trying to clear the back end of building information certificates. This has been a legacy issue where there's been a number that have been on hand for some time, and we're working and continuing to work to try to reduce the overall volume of those and the overall timeframe of those. We're also looking to implement new ways of dealing with BICs in order to make sure that there's less time spent trying to get the right information before we can assess them. And complying development and so forth has been fairly low, but that's simply a factor of council competitiveness with respect to the private sector in that area. In terms of our building advisory service, it's all up and running. We have a duty planner service that we've had for some time. We also have various tools in terms of online lodgement services being able to be booked online. But the key thing here is that's been implemented is the new integration with the New South Wales Planning Portal, and that has been a success, although it did take a little bit of work and a bit of teething time. Our IMT team helped us greatly in trying to get that set up, and it's generally working quite well, and therefore reducing an awful lot of manual handling that was happening across the council. We aren't as quick as we'd like at this stage, but that's something that we are working on in terms of trying to improve our processes. So essentially, in conclusion, the team continues to work to drive down the overall number of applications, and we are, while we're facing some headwinds in terms of staff recruitment and things of that nature, we are looking to continue to work on process improvements and everything else that'll try to hopefully get those assessment times down. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Frayne. Councillors, do we have any questions at all for Mr. Frayne? Nope. I would just like to say thank you. I always, whenever this report comes up, I always find it really interesting because it just shows just how much work you guys are doing in the development and building team. Yes, and you're very well aware of where you need to probably focus some more resources if possible, but well done. I think you've got a large volume of work in all sorts of coming at you in all different directions, so good job. Any more discussion from anyone? No? Okay, well, we might move that. Ms. McKinley?
Your vote, please, Madam Chair.
Four.
Your vote. 4. Councillor Amby Haperhart.
4.
Councillor Ball.
4.
Councillor Jamison.
4.
Councillor Marnie.
4.
Councillor Wang.
4.
Mayor Councillor Catras.
4.
7 votes for, unanimous.
Great. Thank you, Ms. McKinley. So we'll declare that one carried, and we will also declare the meeting closed at 9:02 p.m. And thank you everyone for coming, and a special thank you to Ms. Carmen for hanging until the very end. You're the only one left from the gallery, so well done. You've stayed through to the very end. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll close the meeting at 9:03. Thank you.